Well, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. I want to express a tremendous thank you to Adriana. We've become fast friends since our meeting in San Antonio, Texas this last week at the International Reading Association Conference. I also want to say a big thank you to Monica de la Garza for setting this up, and to my good friends in the International Reading Association for making these connections. It's an absolute thrill for me to be here speaking to so many people around the world all at once, and to those of you who will connect with this video later on. I can't tell you what a thrill this is to be able to share my thoughts and ideas, and I hope that they are helpful to you. I'm going to click right on the presentation. Let me get to the beginning of it here. There we are. I just want you to know this is my contact email in case you need to contact me, but we will also be in touch through the platform, I understand. Identifying language levels at a glance. Classroom assessment and instruction across grade levels. Let's get right into it. As classroom teachers, we have a very common type of scenario where we work in a diverse setting. Our instructional day is in progress, and then the school counselor or someone brings a new student to us who may be an English learner or a language learner of another language. Forgive me, I will refer to oftentimes to English learners, but I mean language learner of any type. And we're given very little information about this student. We need some kind of assessment to help us know how to help these students. I like to think of assessment in two different ways. There's summative assessments that are those type of assessments that give us after the fact summaries of learning. That's not going to help us. An after the fact summary of learning will tell us what happens after instruction. But what we need is something to help us guide the formation of our instruction, and that's called formative assessment. And that provides teachers with information about individual students, not large populations, and the information provided will help us with progress, understanding the progress of the learner. In other words, teachers use formative assessment to know how to accommodate learning, revise instruction, and shape instruction to the specific needs of every child. This slide is difficult to read, but so often what we think about is, I like the metaphor of a three-dimensional chessboard, because we're thinking about the language level of a child, we're thinking about the grade level of a child, and we're also thinking about the academic standards of what we're teaching and how those fit with the child. So we're trying to bring together those three areas together. Let's talk a little bit about language level. The way I understand language levels is that as we learn languages, we start at a beginning stage, which is often referred to as that silent period, where we can, I'll talk in more specifically about that, but we're able to articulate very little in a language. Then we move to an early intermediate stage where we speak in simple sentences, then to an intermediate stage where we use expanded sentences with more detail. Then over time we move to an early advanced stage, which I like to think of as comfort zones, where I can feel very comfortable talking about a particular thing, such as I can talk about my favorite football team all day long, but as soon as I start to talk about the parts of my car, I may not know the language, so I've moved out of my comfort zone. But the early advanced student has limited comfort zones and needs to expand that. Another stage is the advanced stage, and what characterizes that is that the language learner is very socially skilled, can tell jokes, can also lead discussions, can synthesize what others are saying. Let's move on. What I did is I put together this chart to help us understand these different language levels. You will notice, I'm going to use the arrow here. You will notice that there are 5 different language levels that I've articulated. There's beginning, early intermediate, early advanced, and advanced. Something else that I put in this chart is the duration. I'm understanding that people are having trouble hearing. How is that? Can you hear that better? Can you hear that better? Please indicate on the chat room if you can hear it. Okay, some people are saying it's no problem at their end. I'll continue. Okay, great. Thank you, Felipe. You can hear that now. What I'm going to do is jump over to, you'll notice that there's student behaviors here for each level. I use this as a way on a single page where I can identify different behaviors of the student. Let's look a little bit closer at one. I'd like to focus on the behaviors of a beginning language learner. First of all, beginning language learner can be silent. Oftentimes, a beginning language learner will not be able to say anything more than just wagging a head, yes or no, or possibly saying, I don't know, I don't understand. A beginning language learner can offer those yes-no responses, can name some familiar objects, possibly offer 1 or 2 word responses, and can show comprehension by following directions. What's important to note is that these behaviors will dictate what strategies we employ in order to help out this student. Let's move on. I'd like to outline five different strategies to help beginning language learners. First of all, we want to pay attention to our speech. Oftentimes it's referred to as caretaker speech, and I'll talk about that in detail. We want to use real objects, realia, and visuals to make what we're saying very comprehensible. We want to show meaning through gestures and meaningful actions. And we also want to avoid forced speech, and I'll talk about that one in particular in a moment. And it also, we want to use attractive books and read with students. These 5 strategies will have particular help for the beginning language learner, but they also establish a foundation for other ways that we work with language learners in action. Let's move on. Here's the first strategy: employ simple speech. Simple caretaker speech. And I take a quote from Albert Einstein that says, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And there's real discipline in how we govern our speech when we're working with language levels. First of all, we want to check the speed of our language. If I talk really rapidly, then I'm just going to create noise. But if I slow my speech down, I make myself more intelligible to beginning language learners. I also want to pay attention to my volume. Oftentimes, when we're working with students who are learning a language, they come from different cultural backgrounds. And the notion of volume is culturally determined. Oftentimes as teachers, we think if we raise our voice, we'll make ourselves more easily understood, but oftentimes it just is more unsettling for the student. So lowering our volume as a first option is a wise piece. Also, emphasizing key words, and I'd like to show you one quick example. I'm going to hold this up. I hope you can see this. This is one way to emphasize key words. This is a picture of a bird in an art lesson showing foreground, middle ground, and background. And look at how this was done. Here's the foreground. I'm going to lift that off. Here's the middle ground. I'm going to lift that up. And there's the background of the picture. Let me show that again. Foreground, middle ground, and background. These are ways, I'm going to hold up the keywords there. Notice that I did not use a lot of words, but I emphasized three keywords that allowed us to emphasize what the lesson was about for art. Let's move on. Using realia, real objects, and visuals. I can't emphasize this enough when we're working with students who are language learners. I have a rule that I share with my students is that we show first and label what we look at second. Let me emphasize that again. Show first, label second. So we want to show real objects, we want to show pictures, we want to show the actual drawings that students are doing to make things understood. One of the key reasons why we use real objects is that we can tap all the senses to increase understanding and retention, to help students understand in their own language what we're talking about, and also to help them remember what we're referring to. And I like the idea of using students' drawings. We don't have to spend money. We can ask students to draw ahead of time what we're going to discuss with our lessons and use their ideas, their visions, to help us understand. For example, this is about the circulatory system using a student drawing. Let's continue on. In the United States, we have certain grade level standards for language development, and look at these standards to describe people, places, things, and events with relevant detail, expressing ideas and feelings clearly. We're also asked in our instruction to add drawings or other visual displays to descriptions when appropriate to clarify thoughts and feelings. These map on quite well to the strategies I just mentioned. Here's an idea that I would suggest for using visuals. When students are studying a story, have them draw up a storyboard. That allows them to sequence their ideas, to relate details of the text, and they can also cut up the storyboard into individual pictures, mix up those pictures, and then rearrange them in order to practice sequencing. Here's some examples of the different kinds of storyboarding activities. Now you'll notice with this one on the right, it has no written text underneath it. This would be a storyboard for a beginning language user. This one would be more for an intermediate language user with some writing underneath it. And this one up here would be more for a more advanced language user that would require some more specific details written about it. But the baseline is that the ideas that the student has and their understanding is illustrated first and then labeled second. See that rule going on there? Illustrate first, show first, label second. Let's move on. The third strategy that I recommended is that we show meaning through gestures. Now, there was an educational psychologist by the name of James Asher who developed a strategy called total physical response. And what that involves is basically modeling a series of commands, physically modeling actions. For example, there's a video of a teacher teaching Japanese, and he's holding the hands with some of his students, and they walk together, and then they jump up in the air together at the same time, and they say the word Kobe, which means in Japanese, jump. They're modeling the action and using a command. Something that I recommend is that we write out our commands on a chart, and we number those commands for orientation for students. I'll show you an example in just a second. Something else we can do is we can use real objects like a prompt to help this language become more comprehensible. Let me show you an example right here. Oh, by the way, I got ahead of myself. I'll come back to this. Here's an example. Notice this total physical response chart. The key words of the chart are whisper, swallow, dance, and swing. Each one of these is numbered so that to help students understand what's happening. And the command here is whisper a secret to the student next to you. Here they got some realia. They were given some bread, and they were taught, swallow that piece of bread in the mouth, doing the actual action with this. Dance around the table. Now, the teacher would dance with the students as they move and actually express the word dance by physical responses. And swing their legs back and forth. Let me go back 2 slides here. According to our standards for learning, for kindergarten students, they are to understand and follow 1- and 2-step directions. Using total physical response is very helpful for them. For first grade students, they are to give and restate and follow simple 2-step directions. And for second grade students, they're to give and follow 3- and 4-step oral directions. Using caretaker speech, our first strategy, we can employ a variety of total physical response strategies where we model the commands that we've written out, we write the commands on a chart, and we number the steps. And we also ask students to partner with each other and give commands to each other to see if they know what the words are. Let's go back to our chart. So what we have is initially the teacher would act out these commands. Then the teacher would ask students to play teacher with each other. One would be the teacher and the other would follow the commands to practice using the words. Now let me show you something that's really remarkable here. Look at this next TPR chart. This is written in the Cambodian language, Khmer. Sometimes when we look at something like a TPR chart in English, it doesn't look like much. I'm going to go back to the English one. That doesn't look like a lot of language. But when we switch languages, you begin to realize look at what's going on here. You see the numbers for each command? And you know what this is? This is a directed lesson on how to draw a face. It's a directed drawing lesson using total physical response. It's hard to recognize that when we look at an entirely different language. But I got to tell you, I sat in personally on this lesson. We never talked in English. It was all in Khmer, and the instructor had everybody following directions because the instructor modeled with physical actions each action to do with these commands. Let's move on. The fourth strategy that I outlined was to avoid forced speech. Now this one is interesting. Oftentimes I've been in classrooms with inexperienced teachers who try to command their students to hurry up and speak English, and they will almost shout that at students. But I really want you to know that this is very flawed thinking. We cannot order someone to speak a language they don't know. In the same way, I can't order you to speak Japanese and expect you to communicate that language. All that's going to do is going to frustrate the language learner when I try to order them to hurry up and speak. What we can do is we can invite students to share their ideas in their own language with each other. Particularly when we're dealing with complex ideas, plan to take time in your lesson to stop and have students share their thinking with each other in their own language, and then talk with each other to the best of their ability in the target language, which in this case is English. So just to review, we're not going to be ordering students to speak because it's really impossible to do that. We're going to invite students to have opportunities to think out loud in their own language. We're going to plan spaces in our lessons so that they can do this. This doesn't mean that they're going to be speaking in their home language all the time. It's just we're going to invite and allow some space for brief times where they can use their own language. I'm showing a chart right now, which you're probably wondering, why is this up here? Well, this is a kind of a discussion rubric, or a way that a student who does not speak the language well can provide some feedback and evaluation on the lesson. We have several criteria here. First of all, let's talk about the rubric. When the speaker is talking, did the speaker do a fabulous job? Did they exceed the criteria? Did they meet the criteria? Was it below criteria? Or was something off topic or missing? What we can do is we can ask the language learner to give us a 4 if the area was wonderful, a 3 if it was okay, 2 if it didn't quite work, and a 1 if it was below or off topic. They don't have to be able to speak well. All they have to do is draw a circle around the number that applies. And we have a couple different categories of ways of looking at this. They can be thinking about, what they heard, was that interactive? Did it have clear reasoning? And did it have supporting evidence? And without using much of the target language, they can participate in evaluating how well they're learning, what's going on. Let's move on. The 5th strategy that I recommend is using quality books. And I'm showing a picture of a book here about Andy Warhol, the famous artist, called Uncle Andy. And I highly recommend, anytime you can use books with lots of good pictures and good storyline, you're going to be helping students in the best way. Let's look at how one-way books were used here. What I love about this strategy here is that after reading about a story, the teacher took a copy of a picture of one of the characters and asked the students to talk about the character. But you notice they wrote ideas in kind of a cluster. I call this a cluster map around the story. And you'll notice here that some of the clusters are red, some are orange, and some are green. If you look closer at these, what the teacher has done, after the ideas of each student has been talked about with this, about this story, they group the ideas according to similar things, such as, well, look at this. Here's a green one where it says they are lying on the roof. Is there something else about the roof? Well, here she dreams of flying from the roof. Let's look at what they've done now. All those ideas that were red are now grouped together in a tree map. And the green ideas get grouped together, and this becomes the beginning of sharing paragraphs. In similar ideas, this one is about things about the character Cassie, things that she says or does, and then things that she wants or likes to do. Let's look at another one. Look at this character, Arandi. Here's something about her birthday. And so the teacher says, is there something else of what we talked about? It's about her birthday. And look at over here. Here's a sentence about her birthday, that she's going to be 7 years old. And for her birthday, she wanted a red dress. So look at this. Here are sentences about her birthday. The same ones that were on the cluster chart are now put on the tree map. Now what can you do with this? Well, if I were a beginning student, I can choose sentences to copy to make my own writing about the story. If I were an intermediate level student, I can choose sentences here and here and here to make paragraphs as I write it. If I'm an advanced student, I can make a paragraph about this, a paragraph about this, a paragraph about this, a paragraph about this area, and a paragraph about this area. And suddenly, I'm writing multiple pages with the help of one chart. It started back here with a discussion about a wonderful book, and then finding similar ideas, and then grouping those ideas on a tree map. Let's continue on. For grades 3 through 5, we can discuss selected vividly illustrated text. We can allow beginning students to point to the pictures that they love in the story in order to share their ideas. And we can ask students to sketch, to draw out their ideas. And then we can have partners work together so one can provide words for the drawings of the other. Discussing selected vividly illustrated text, allowing beginning students to point to the areas that they're of interest to them, ask students to draw their own pictures, and have students partner up to give words to each other. Look at this. For grades 6 through 8, we can establish roles for discussion where one can be recording what's happening, another one can moderate the discussion to make sure every person has an opportunity to share their ideas, and then another one can operate as the illustrator, someone who is drawing the ideas and sketching those out so that every member knows what's happening. We can require in our discussions the use of visuals and presentations as a product of the group session. We can establish criteria that all the big ideas must be illustrated. So we use those 5 strategies. Let's move on. With our upper grades, our preparatory schools, I've got them in the United States, we refer to 9th through 12th grade. We don't want to force English. We don't want to force speech. We want to allow those opportunities for students to deal with complex topics using their own language first, and then discussing in mixed groups in the language that we're teaching, oftentimes in English. Consider providing a flow chart for decision making on how we decide whose ideas we're going to choose. And we only vote on ideas if they're well illustrated. That allows all students to see what we're talking about, no matter their language level. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to finish off with an activity with the group where we write a song together. I'd like us to select a theme, and I'm going to pick a familiar melody. And then we're going to create a word bank, and we're going to fill in a song frame, and then we're going to sing here. Believe it or not, we're going to sing in 20 countries all at once here. What I'd like to do is I'd like us to think about a theme. And I'm going to ask you to help me out and use the chat box. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a word bank with words that have 4 syllables, with words that have 3 syllables, and words that have 2 syllables. And we're going to write a song to the tune of London Bridges. We're probably going to say, why am I doing it this way? Listen to how the song plays. I'd like to sing the song to you first. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Now look at the lines as I count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the whiteboard here, and I'm going to write the number 4 up here. Let me change the color real quick. I'm going to write the number 4, the number 3, and the number 2. And what I'm going to ask you, the participants, if you would use the chat room box, and if you think of a word related to teaching language that begins with 4 syllables, 3 syllables, or 2 syllables. And I'm going to write those words and create a word bank real quickly now. So please write something up there, and I'll do the first one. Look at this. Teaching language. That has 3 syllables. So I'm going to write that right here. Now I'm going to ask others to write words on the chat box area that have either 4 syllables, 3 syllables, or 2 syllables, and we're going to plug these into a song. Go ahead, don't be shy. Exercise, that has 3 syllables. So I'm going to write the word exercise right here. Okay, I've got exercise. Give me some more. Challenge. Challenge is a word that comes here. Activity. Activity. That's 4. Skill is 1 syllable. Maybe we can write the word skill in a different way. Musician. That's 3. I see superstition. That's 4. Test is 1 syllable. I need 2, 3, or 4. Can you write that? Beautiful. That's 3. I didn't want the 3-syllable words. Water. That's interesting. I wonder why we're using water. Absolutely. There's 4. Now you're getting into it. I can see that happening. Exam. Somebody said weirdo. Today, tomorrow. Let me put tomorrow here. Oops. Treasure. Well, I need some more 4-syllable phrases, and you don't have to do just one word. How about this one? Learning quickly. Difficulty. Oh. Information. That's 4. Now what I'm going to do, keep on writing words, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write the word title, because we're going to write the title of this later. And then what we're going to do is on the side, I'm going to write the number of syllables we're going to use. And I'm going to change the color to red. 4, 3, 3, 3. Keep on going. 4, 3, 2, 2. Okay, now I can pick words and phrases that can go in these areas. So I'm going to take the word, I'm going to start off with 4-syllable words and switch to my color to black here. Learning quickly. That's going to be my start. Now I need a 3-syllable word. How about exercise? Or let me see if there's one on the list here that I didn't quite get. How about learning quickly? Let's explore. I see someone wrote the word explore there. And I need another 3. I'm going to pick the word exercise. Exercise. I need another 3. How about wonderful? Somebody just wrote the word wonderful. I'm going to write that up there. Now I need a 4-syllable phrase here. How about absolutely? Absolutely. And I need a 3-syllable one. 3-syllable one. How about engaging? And now a 2-syllable one. How about if I say exam? And my last one is, oh, let me put that up a little higher so we can see that. Today. Believe it or not, we just wrote a song, but we're going to need a title for this song. Could I ask somebody to write in the chat room what they think might be a title? And I'm going to get my ukulele here. Here's my ukulele. I'm going to sing through the song, and then I want you to think of a title for it for me. Learning quickly, let's explore. Exercise wonderful, absolutely engaging. Exam today. There it is. Learning quickly, let's explore. Exercise wonderful, absolutely engaging. Exam today. Exam day, huh? All right, there's the title for it, Exam Day. Let's put that up there. All right, there's our song. There's our song. Someone said exams are wonderful. I don't know. All right, here we go. We just wrote a song with 20 countries all at once. Congratulations. Congratulations. And what I'm going to do, now that you've seen this, I'm going to go back to the presentation, and you see how we have the PowerPoint there. Oh, it's not advancing now. Well, I'll just leave it on the, I'll go back to the whiteboard there. I'll just leave it right there. So what we have up here, and I'm going to use red, and this part is our word bank. Here's our word bank. And then down here, this is our song frame. So I have a bank of words that's going to help students know what words to use. I've organized them according to syllable count. And then we made a song frame to write a song according to the different syllable counts. All right. Well, I'm looking at time here, and I'm going to turn it over to our good friends in Washington to moderate questions and answers, and I hope I can answer your questions. So I'm turning it over to the folks in Washington now.
Okay. Please type in the chat box if you can hear me, and in a second here I'm going to load my video up. The logo hasn't appeared yet. Just a second. Okay. Well, anyhow, I can't turn on my video, but this first and foremost, Paul, thanks so much for the excellent presentation. It was really insightful and very illustrative, and I'm sure all of the participants gained a lot out of it. I know I certainly